we go, let's get those wheels out on the road. It may get dusty, but that's the way she goes. We'll build some greasy old cars and drink our AGT. Hey, don't you know, it's partly built.
Well, it's been 2 weeks, and as you can see, nothing's changed. It hasn't even moved. He kind of cleaned up, but not really. So I got a bunch of parts. Every time I come, I just bring another pile of shit. So I don't know. I'm gonna try and do some wiring today while Josh does whatever it is that Josh does. I think he's got to get a bottle of welding gas, so we'll get her on the hoist and get back to work. Okay, so I got new microphones we're going to try out. They were almost the cheapest ones I could get on Amazon. But I'm going to start with vacuuming this out. And just because, I don't feel like kneeling on junk because my knees are already no good. Alright, so I guess I didn't really think about this until the last video. All of a sudden got a ton of views and there was a bunch of questions. A lot of people don't know what the deal is with this car. So this is a 72 Super Beetle. Nothing too special about that. I mean, they made a million Volkswagen Beetles. It is the Super Beetle. So it's got the McPherson strut, front suspension, and it's a little bit longer, I think. Maybe a little wider. I don't know. It had the 1600 air-cooled that they all did, but it now has the engine, transmission, and actually from about here back is the front end of a 2000 Chevrolet Cavalier Z24. Like, this was your footwell, essentially, on the Cavalier. So it's like we parked the back end of a Beetle on the front of a Cavalier. I mean, we did have to do a bunch of structure. Like, this was all rotted out, so we put like heavy tubing in, a ton of structure, reinforced a bunch of the frame. But now it's a 2.4 liter. Unfortunately, it's an automatic. Neither one of us is too excited about that fact, but the Cavalier was free. The Beetle cost $600, so it'll work. So I think they're like roughly 165 horsepower. And now it's mid-engine, not rear engine. So the engine is like 2.5, 3 feet farther forward from what it would have been originally. Well, probably about 2.5. So the weight is a little more balanced on it. It's now an automatic. It's, with the wheel spacers and these tires, it's 8 inches wider on each side. So it's 16 inches wider overall on the back. We still got to lock out the rear steer. Well, would have been the front steer on the Cavalier. I got Heim joints and stuff. But I'm going to get started today with wiring. Josh has gone to town to get more welding gas because, stick welding, it works, but not very well on thin material. So yeah, the plan is today, I'm going to get started on wiring. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to finish doing the negative cable to the battery. Then I'm going to run my main power wire forward for my factory Beetle harness down here. And once I get main power forward and I have a ground, I can figure out which of those lights is for tail lights, which one goes back to the starter, and all that, and I can wire that in. And then I also have to run wires forward for the OBD2 sensor, and I got to look at my list, anything else I need at the front. I do have a switch panel somewhere in the parts. Every time I come here, I just bring another selection of parts. We finally got the front brakes. I got to send those to the machine shop, get them drilled and tapped, and I've already ordered thread and studs so that we can finish up the front brakes. The master cylinder is in that bag. The calipers and pads are there. The brake hoses are here. The mounting brackets. I just finished vacuuming out the floor so that I can kneel in here without it totally killing my knees. And I'm going to get started running wires. So I think I'm going to end up running them with the brake line over there on the floor for the rear brake line. That's the initial thought anyway. Actually, the smart thing to do would be put them on the passenger side of the floor on the tunnel, so they're not in the way of the driver's feet at all. and I can P-clamp it all down. I got a bunch of P-clamps because I'm doing this extra fancy because I'm a professional. I have trailer wiring. So 7-wire trailer cord, and somewhere over here I have like 4-gauge cable, and I'm going to use the 4-gauge to the front for main power, and then I can run all the tail lights and stuff on this. If this is good enough to run your 53-foot trailer, it's definitely overkill on this car, especially when modern stuff is like 20 or 24-gauge wiring, but it'll work. It's stuff I have left over, so in my mind it's free, and free parts are always better. So I'm going to get to work. All right, so we did a whole bunch of wiring testing here, and we have all but one wire on this harness hooked up. I figured out what the main power in was, and this is temporarily hooked together. And I now have the starter, left signal, tail, right signal, ignition, and brake, and electric fan wiring figured out. All the rest of the factory Beetle wires that were in that harness that I don't need, I figured out what they do, and I've just got them labeled for now and tied off to the side right here. So I just ran this wiring into the cab for now. It'll come down. It'll be P-clamped along the floor with the brake line. Goes through the firewall back there. And we'll get that all wired in. I can actually wire in the starter right now. And I could start figuring out the ignition. There's a bunch of ignition wires back in here that I need to tie in. These pinks. There's some over here. Kind of a mess. It'll be better once we get up in there a little bit. What are you working on up there, Josh?
I'm just going to start figuring out this suspension and cooling cross member thing.
Very good. We should do something about this one of these days.
Yeah, eventually.
It's just extra metal. Well, the wheel bearing grease looks good, but this is quite the nut that Volkswagen uses. I've never seen something like that before.
Oh.
Oh well. These are actually still in their shape. But
It's a little dry in there a little bit, but not bad.
grease is still good in the cap. So the brakes are actually not bad.
Not too
I mean, who's got time for drum brakes? And quite the freaking adjusters. Dual star wheels. Okay, so there's the brake all disassembled. Like 5-minute job. Real easy. All right, so caliper brackets on the left or right hand side. Red Loctite, we torqued them all up. Josh pulled the bearing and seal out for me. When you test fit the rotor, it comes with it.
Oh, nice.
So I'm just gonna loose fit the caliper on there so I can do the brake line. And then I'll do the other side, and then I have the master cylinder to do yet. So, getting there. All right. So we blew out the brake lines from the master cylinder back, got all the junk out of them. I only covered Josh a little bit. And so we tied those all back in. And I guess my next thing is to start taking the master cylinder out. What are you working on?
I'm going to keep putting cooling lines in, hopefully. Hopefully they will. I need to cut a hole up there. Hopefully they'll fit in just like so, and then we don't have tires rubbing on our cooling lines.
In theory, but we can always adjust steering stops if we have to.
And adjust the diameter of this with a hammer.
Yes. Yes. Also a good solution. All right, so Josh has cut a hole, and now he's fitting the pipe. I think that'll work good, and it actually fits in there fairly tight. I think we'll oval it.
Might have to squish it in a bit more yet.
Yeah, I think we'll maybe cut that a little shorter at the bottom yet, and then we'll oval that pipe to get as much clearance as we can, but it's looking better.
Coming.
All right, so pipe is tacked in. I gave it the old hammer treatment, so it finished as best as we're going to get in here. Like, it fits pretty tight, less than a finger, and then we'll end up welding the top in so that it's solid. And then we'll end up putting a little piece of 1.5 inch in the top, or a king nipple or something, hook up to our rad hoses, but that should work good. It fits in there better than I thought it would.
And it's going to add to the structure and rigidity of the frame.
Right, that too. So I guess next, jump to the other side. All right, we'll get to it. Okay, so that's 2 sides tacked in. We thought we did good on this side. Then we did this side, and yeah, that is tight. That is tight in there. From the front, you don't even see the pipe. So there's a lot of finish welding there to do, but we don't want to finish weld any of that in until we test the wheels on it after we get the rotors drilled and the brake job finished. So that's about all we can do for that. So I think next we do the pipes underneath.
Yeah, we might as well.
We get those pipes in, then we can do the fuel lines and the tranny cooler lines, because we also have to bring the tranny cooler lines up to the front. So we're making headway today.
All the little bits and pieces that need done.
Yeah, it's coming together good. I got some of the wiring figured out. I need more wire. I figured I had enough on that spool to do to the front and back, like front to back twice, but no, just once. Do some digging for some spare wire.
Might even be able to start it one of these days.
Getting closer. I got to do some wiring. We got to do a fuel system. Got to do tranny cooler. Then we can try starting it. But I got to get the wiring and the fuel system done for sure, so that wiring just so I can flash it, so I can download it and do the tune. Okay, so we got a couple captive nuts welded in, and I've got one piece of plate so far that'll expand the gap. Then we'll notch this, lay the pipes on it, weld the pipes. We're going to put one of these at the back and one of these at the front. Center the pipes, mark it, notch it, weld the pipes to these, and then we can start hanging stuff like the fuel pump, the fuel lines, the cooler lines, all that stuff. Okay, so the pipes are tacked into place on the plates here. And we left enough room that if I order those 13 3/4 inch long flexible hoses, they should fit in there perfectly. And then we can adjust the lengths at the back as we need. We'll probably end up cutting them 5-6 inches shorter, but I don't want to do that till we're sure what hoses we're using. So we'll get these dropped out and weld them a little better, I think. All right, so I think we're going to call it a night. We just finished getting a very rough fuel pump mount made and installed. We got a fitting coming off the fuel tank now, an inline filter for a pre-filter. We got it through the frame here. We're going to end up drilling that bigger and putting a grommet. And then this will go through up to the fuel pump. And we get the fuel pump here, then we'll hard line it all the way to the back. So it's been a pretty productive day. Got the front brakes tore apart and half assembled. Got all the brake lines flushed. I'm ready to pull the master next time we have it down. Everything's undone from that. We figured out our coolant tubes here. Got started putting in the lower cross member / coolant crossover. We built the coolant pipes under the tunnel. Got a bunch of wiring done. She's coming. Making some progress, so we'll catch you next time.
Peace.